West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Glenn, let me just start with you and what happened in that court today with Judge Chutkan. It got heated at times. There were times when Judge Chutkan said to the defense, to the Trump team, you're simply not getting the 2-year extension that you're hoping for. And in the end, they got 2 months.
Yeah, Ali, it did get heated at times, but the heat was coming from just one side of the courtroom. That was from the defense counsel's table. John Lauro, the lead defense attorney for Donald Trump, started loud and he only got louder. And twice, Judge Chutkan asked him to please take the temperature down. He was arguing passionately about why he contended he needed 2.5 to 3 years to prepare the case for trial. Now, I will say Judge Chutkan opened with neither of the 2 trial dates that have been proposed, this coming January 2nd by the prosecution or April 2026 proposed by the defense, neither are appropriate. So I was sort of expecting maybe a Solomonic splitting of the difference. But here's how it sort of played out. She gave the defense team several opportunities to come up with a more realistic proposed trial date. And John Lauro stubbornly refused to budge even 1 month or 1 day. And by the end of the hearing, and I think she had a pretty good sense coming into the hearing what she was thinking, by the end of the hearing, she said, well, Mr. Lauro, your idea and my idea of how much time is necessary to prepare a trial are very, very different. And I'm setting jury selection to begin in this case on March 4th, 2024. So that is about 7 months or so from now. She believes that gives Donald Trump's defense team enough time to adequately prepare for trial.
Mary, there are now distinctions, or people who look at the various indictments and wonder how they're all the same. There's a good distinction here to be made between this particular case and the Mar-a-Lago documents case, in which, with Mar-a-Lago, it's a whole lot of top secret classified documents. They need to go special places to review them. Judge Chutkan kind of made the point to Lauro today that that's not what this case is. There's a whole lot of information that you'll have that you already know about. It doesn't actually require the prep time that Lauro thinks it does. That doesn't mean every case doesn't. They might have had a better argument if this were a different case. But she said, based on the evidence that we understand now, this is enough time.
That's right. And remember, Judge Chutkan was herself a defense attorney and who tried cases, in fact, tried cases against Glenn, I'm sure, and myself back in the day. And so she knows what it takes to prepare a case for trial. And you're right. The difference between this and Mar-a-Lago is very significant because every single one of those classified documents that is charged in that indictment, some 31 classified documents, The defense has to be able to look at those. They have to be able to make arguments about whether the government did or did not closely hold those documents. In other words, keep them from being made public. And so that means they will want to look at other classified information. They can only do that in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. They can't take them to their offices. They have to go through a whole series of very specialized hearings under the Classified Information Procedures Act. None of that, with one small caveat, is at issue with the January 6th related case. Now, the government did give notice that there are a small number of classified documents that they feel like they have to turn over to Mr. Trump as part of the January 6th related case. But it is a small number, and they think that they can be handled very readily and is not something that is going to require the same number of protracted hearings as the Mar-a-Lago case. And as you indicated, this is also a case where, yes, there may be some details that are new in the indictment, some documents perhaps that Mr. Trump and his attorneys haven't seen, but much of this story has been told before. It's been told in the press, it's been told in the House Select Committee's report, and it's been told in, of course, the indictment itself. And the government was ready, and I believe the prosecutors today represented it. They had either finished or almost completely finished turning over discovery. So even though it's voluminous, it's not the kind of thing that defense attorneys or even the prosecutor needs to lay eyes on every single document or digital piece of evidence. They can use machine searches with keywords, et cetera, to get this through. So I think she was being realistic, and I think this case is definitely going to go to trial before the election.
So that's the answer that we need from somebody like you, who's a real expert, who can distinguish between the kinds of documents that need preparation and secrecy and time to review. And then there's this. The former Trump attorney, Alina Habba, was on Fox News yesterday making an argument that doesn't sound like it was in line with what Trump's attorney in court was saying yesterday. But here's what she said about this case.
How do you logistically handle, prepping a client for all of those different trials and running for president of the United States?
Yeah, if it was a normal person, honestly, Shannon, I could understand the concern. President Trump is not your average person. He's incredibly intelligent, and he knows the ropes. He also knows the facts because he lived them. These are not complicated facts. Look at Fannie. It was a phone call that's been around forever, that he refers to as the perfect phone call. What is he going to have to be prepped for? The truth? You don't have to prep much when you've done nothing wrong. So that I'm not concerned with.
Basil was chuckling, so you're getting the response on that one. But you don't have to prep. He knows the facts. He knows the truth. What's there to prep for? Why wait till March? Why not just have this case next week?
Well, that's exactly right. And you're right. I was chuckling. That's funny. We could have it next week. And the reality is that, as Glenn was reporting earlier, all of that bravado, all of that noise, all of that passion, that's what they're used to doing. They're bullies, right? We've known that. We've seen that. That's what they're used to doing. And what's amazing about what's happening as we see this play out is that this is sort of the big boy table, right?
Right.
These are judges and lawyers that do not play around.
Right.
I was going to use another word, but I won't. They do not play around. And as we get closer, and I imagine that Trump's team is going to try to do everything in their power to move this thing again and again and again. It's a very tricky day that the judge has chosen if you're in the Trump camp, because it's right before Super Tuesday. Yeah. He certainly does not want to have that happen, but the reality is we are now at a point where every trick that he's used to using is just not going to work for him.
Charlie, though, here's the interesting thing. Basil points out it's the day before Super Tuesday. But if you're Donald Trump and you've been looking at this very, very busy week that you've just had, the last 7 days, let's call it, Wednesday, which was possibly your most threatening day, the day of the Republican debate that you weren't part of and you left a lane and an opportunity open for someone else, didn't really materialize into much. I'm not sure that any of this affects Donald Trump's political calendar all that much, because he just plays as if it's not bothering him, and his supporters don't seem to be too troubled by it either.
Well, let's be honest. None of us know exactly what is going to happen, but you make a great point. The date is interesting because it is right at the cusp of when I think he hopes that he's going to wrap up the Republican nomination. I mean, it is certainly possible that he will wrap up the nomination during this trial, while this trial is going on. And I think you saw last Wednesday, how deeply enthralled the Republican Party is to Donald Trump when 6 of his 8 challengers, people running against him for president, said they would still support him if he was a convicted felon. But we're going to have many, many, many days like this over the next year and a half. Where his lawyers are going to go into court, as Basil says, and they're going to try the usual Trumpian tactics in an environment where that doesn't sail. I mean, his lawyers are doing exactly what he is telling them to do, and Donald Trump is maybe riding high in the Republican Party, but he is really the client from hell. And you can see that in the performance of his lawyers over the last few days.
So let's think about that. Glenn, you were in that court. It's the first of many times we're going to see Tanya Chutkan and somebody who most people don't know except you do, and you're going to see her interacting. How'd that look? Because she made the point that she doesn't want this politicized and she doesn't want politics to play a role, but she did have to get into it a little bit with Donald Trump's lawyer. Tell me what we need to know about Tanya Chutkan based on what we saw today.
Yeah, she is smart. She is fair. She is stern. I think she will be demanding. I think once she sets a trial date, and she will set a briefing schedule in the run-up to that trial date, I think she's going to stick with that. I don't think she's going to let defense requests to push deadlines down the road or to have a trial date slide. I don't think she will endorse that. I don't think she will allow that. As my friend and former colleague Mary said, I tried murder cases against Tanya Chutkan right across the street in Superior Court. She actually referred today to the fact that she has prepared cases as a defense attorney, murder cases, and she understands the responsibility that a defense attorney has to make sure they understand all of the evidence that has been handed over in discovery. But she was confident that Donald Trump's team of defense lawyers can do that in the next 7 months. So, I've said it before. When you watch Tanya Chutkan preside over any criminal case, I've watched her preside over some of the J6 cases, she doesn't play. She's polite, but she is stern. And I don't think the defense attorneys should try her patience or her resolve, particularly when she made a point of saying, you know what, Donald Trump is entitled to a fair and speedy trial, but so are the American people. They're entitled to a speedy trial. They're entitled to have this resolved well in advance of the election. So this is how we're going to proceed.
It is Tuesday, the 29th of August of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is the door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special, daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. All right. Now, I've gone on about this before. The Spanish paprika is just as fine, just as good as the Hungarian, but there's just lots more of the Hungarian. Though there was a point in time where we were thinking maybe the Hungarian we should put on the back shelf for a while because we were going to boycott them, and maybe we still will. Because of that, though, because of Hungary doing what Hungary has been doing, the Spanish production of paprika has increased dramatically, but it's still more expensive because there's still a lot less of it. But if you have the Spanish paprika in your shelf, in your pantry, use it. It's good. Okay, got that out of the way. Well, we have more mass shootings and killings and professors getting shot. I don't quite know the story about the Chapel Hill shooting completely. I have my, I speculate, don't we all? Grad student, obviously, I don't know, failed in some aspect of their grad studies and realized that their earning potential was probably going to be diminished dramatically in their field, whatever that was, and decided to take it out on the person who put him in that position, and obviously it wasn't themselves, but the professor, for grading them so harshly. I think that's what it was all about. He might have failed his defense of his thesis. That happens. You never know. But, so this is the world we live in. Anybody can get a gun. This kid who had a Baker Act drawn against him, somehow that didn't show up in Florida's database. I wonder why. Because if you give everybody guns, when, murders are down and everything like that, and murders go up, you can, say, murders are going up and it's because of Joe Biden. He created this crisis. Like how they speak about the border crisis that Joe Biden created. And I'm like, what? Joe Biden created the climate crisis that we've been yelling about since the 80s? That this exact thing that would be happening at the border would be happening if we didn't address climate change, global warming, and all the other BS that we're doing to destroy this planet. Water, air, etc., etc., etc. And what's going to happen? You're going to have climate refugees because of the political strife that arises whenever people are short on things that are very basic, like air and water. And then we can put food in there, too. Where are they going to go? We warned them. We kept saying it. All we were called was dirty commie hippies. You're a dirty commie hippie. You want to destroy American capital might. Really? Yeah, it's going to get destroyed regardless if you don't do something about it. And here we are. Joe Biden created the crisis at the border. So Abbott has to put those chainsaw, human-killing flotation devices in the Rio Grande. Because Joe Biden created the crisis. Just like getting out of Afghanistan. Oh, Joe Biden left people to die in Afghanistan. And no one ever in the media brings up the fact that Trump made a secret deal with the Taliban, turning over every bit of government to them on a date certain. And then the America would bug out on a date certain. And then he would not let Joe have any security briefings during the transition because I guess he figured he was going to destroy America and be able to stay in power because that's what, rich boys do. All right. Also, I have another question. This guy's making a bunch of money off his mugshot. I don't think Mumia was able to do that. I don't know any criminal defendant anywhere was able to make money off the fact they're going to court. The court would take that money. You can't even write an effing book and make money off of it. Give me a break. And then Marsha Blackburn and the rest of the disinformation Nazis asked this question. Or made the statement, the American people want one level of justice. Damn right. Since the slave patrols, they never complained once. And now all of a sudden, these Nazis get caught. They're being ground through the legal system, and now they want reform. Typical Nazi bullshit. Okay. Now, when they call us Nazis, that's what Nazis do. All right. When they say that, trans people and gay people and, just liberals in general, they're the real Nazis. They're the real racists. Typical Nazi bullshit. When we call them Nazis, there's a reason for it. Because we would never call people Nazis because it just, as we would say, it's supposed to stop the argument. There's nothing you can say after that. Well, here we got a bunch of Nazis drawing swastikas on their guns, putting out Nazi manifestos. Oh, well, he was just disturbed. Yeah, damn right he was. He's a Nazi. I haven't met a Nazi yet that wasn't disturbed. I guess maybe that's why people don't like being called Nazis, because they don't think they're disturbed. All right. They just lie with impunity, or as we might say, gaslight. Up is down, down is up. Oh, I don't know, maybe up is sideways, down is the other sideways. It certainly isn't what it is. The assault on truth is relentless. Relentless. I'll get it out. I never had Marsha Blackburn on my timeline before Elon Musk took over. I never had Ted Cruz on my timeline before Elon Musk took over. I had my friends, I had my follows, I had people that I followed me. I get them on my timeline and things would leak through occasionally. But now I can't find any of those people because all I get is Bridget Gabriel even got Tulsi Gabbard talking about how the Democrats are traitors to America because they're taking down their political opponent. While that political opponent was going into other countries doing a collusion with Vladimir Putin to try to find dirt on his political opponent. Give me a break. That's what he got indicted for, impeached for, and it's still happening. And I would say anybody out there making public pronouncements and getting paid for it, they are accomplices to the crime. When you have a Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, J.D. Vance, etc., 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 they are all accomplices to a crime. They've all been paid because every single one of the Republican GOP, I would dare to say even down to city level, every single one of them has NRA laundered Russian rubles. They've all been bought off. They all know it. Our Justice Department knows it. So how do you round up a whole political party of electeds who have been bought off by a hostile foreign power? Well, we used to have the ability to do that, but not anymore, apparently. Okay. You can't indict a sitting president, and I guess you can't indict one who's running for president again to stay out of jail. They have corrupted our system, and I think we better take it back. There's some sanitizing that needs to be done, and I mean it needs to be sanitized, purged, brought back shining new. The American ideal, not this dark Nazi goose-stepping bullshit of hate, xenophobia, corruption. It just... It makes me angry. Can you tell? Okay. Shall we give you a rundown on what we have in store for you on this fabulous Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays? Oh, one other tidbit of information for those of you who might have forgotten or don't know because it's been a while since I mentioned it. We roast corn on the cob. Then we take that corn off and we put it in the chowder. All right? Just letting you know. Sweetens it up, gives it a little, smoky caramel taste. Yeah, it's good. What we do before we roast it is that we let it soak in lime water and salt water for a copious amount of time in the husk. And then we roast the corn in the husk. Then we take it off the cob for easy eating because you can't have a whole cob in the chowder. Fancy that. Okay. Just so you know. All right. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. What do we have beginning here in the Bistro Cafe of said salon? The courtroom calendar for the client from hell is filling up ahead of the election. And that's who we were just talking about. That guy. On the rest of the menu, hey, Remember this guy? Twice convicted con man, Wall Street whiz kid David Bloom? People in New York do. Has been arrested in Los Angeles for bilking dozens of victims out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one of his scams was selling them stocks that he didn't own. Just like from before. Republican lawmakers temporarily silenced one of the Tennessee Three from debate on the House floor using a hastily enacted out-of-order rule. Yeah, they're all about nullifying. See, Nazis nullify. And Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer will call on Democrats to codify Obamacare into state law. See, there's something good that's in the world. Thank you, Gretchen. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Poland is investigating disruptions to train traffic from unauthorized radio signals. And after the break, we move to the chef's table, where Poland is investigating disruptions to train traffic from unauthorized radio signals. And all assembly lines at Toyota's auto plants in Japan have been shut down by computer problems. Coincidence? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Page at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills. So I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again. If you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, we're able to pool those funds with funds sent to us by like-minded Patreons, and we pay our bills. We fly under the radar, and we continue this powerhouse of resistance that has been resisting for over 13 years now. Oh, my. So we're not going to stop, because look what is happening. But we thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. And all kidding aside, really, we do thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Shitter, that's what I'm calling it, with an X, and also on Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, you can do so by going to @Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Shitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, mostly anywhere and everywhere as Justice Putnam, and you can put @Justice Putnam, and that usually works on most social media sites because that's who I am. And I incidentally post the show notes and links diary. It's going to be a diary, not stories. Diary. On Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And that's where you can read the actual reportage from the actual reporters of, whatever news organization they happen to be at. And you can find all of that by going to the show notes and links diary that I offer those links up on my social media sites. So they're easy to find. Okay. Follow the show on Shitter. That's right. It's Now Shitter, at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts, please do. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Just not Stitcher because Sirius XM gets their way. And Stitcher is now no longer. Goodbye. Okay. Let us now tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is out of the Los Angeles Times by James Quealy. David Bloom, a twice-convicted con man, infamous for scamming dozens of wealthy New Yorkers out of millions, has been arrested, accused of bilking at least a dozen Angelenos out of tens and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars after he promised to make them rich by selling them stocks he did not own, authorities said. Bloom, age 59, was charged with 9 counts of grand theft and 9 more counts of fraud while selling securities, court records show. L.A. police took him into custody around 4 a.m. yesterday, Monday morning, and he is being held in the 77th Street lockup in lieu of a $500,000 bail, according to jail records. Now, police allege Bloom told neighbors and new friends he made at local bars and restaurants that he could get them on the ground floor of trendy stocks that had not gone public yet, including Coinbase and Soho House. But Bloom's accusers, some of whom invested well over $10,000 with him, said they never saw profits, and the more they asked about the stock's performance, the scarcer he became. Wow. The alleged LA scam mirrored the one that made Bloom quasi-famous in the first place. Raised on Manhattan's Upper East Side, Bloom grew up accustomed to wealth. In his early 20s, he purchased million-dollar paintings, a Manhattan condo, a Long Island beach house, and an Aston Martin, the favorite car of James Bond. And that was funding that lifestyle with cash from clients of his Greater Sutton Investors Group. Approximately 140 people, including Bloom's grandmother, together invested more than $15 million with him. Despite convincing Marks that his firm's clientele included Bill Cosby and the members of the Rockefeller family, Bloom was not a financial advisor, and he did not invest in anything but his own comforts, according to published reports. Eventually, federal prosecutors caught on, and Bloom was nicknamed the Wall Street Whiz Kid by New York tabloids after pleading guilty to mail and securities fraud in 1988. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and barred from taking part in the securities industry for life. He pleaded guilty to running a similar scam for considerably less money on restaurant staff and bartenders in Midtown Manhattan in the late 90s. He pleaded guilty to larceny and violations of business law in 2000, and prosecutors alleged he had bilked 10 people out of at least $50,000. He served approximately 5 years in prison. Last year, the LA Times chronicled a series of grifts Bloom was accused of running in LA, far removed from the Hamptons and wealthy Manhattan social circles he'd once haunted. Bloom largely hunted for targets in a historic Franklin Village apartment complex and the Frolic Room dive bar along the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Kimberly Cruzy and Jonathan Matisse of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Republican lawmakers voted yesterday, Monday, to temporarily silence a Democratic member of the so-called Tennessee Three during an already tense House floor session after determining the young black member violated newly enacted rules designed to punish disruptive members. Yeah, but they only happen to be black members. Huh, fancy that. The move, directed at Representative Justin Jones, prohibited him from speaking on and debating bills for the remainder of the day, which came a week into a special session that Republican Governor Bill Lee called in reaction to a deadly shooting at a Christian elementary school in Nashville on March. The House and Senate are locked in an icy standoff over what to pass, as families close to the shooting have increasingly voiced their frustrations with the legislative process. Various mental health, juvenile justice, school safety, and other proposals are among what's being considered. Republican legislative leaders are not taking up any significant gun control changes, including the governor's push to keep guns away from people judged to pose a threat to themselves or others, mostly because it might apply to them. The vote to silence Jones prompted loud cries and chants that drowned out proceedings for several minutes, even after the House Speaker ordered the gallery to be cleared out. Moments prior, Jones had been criticizing legislation that would have allowed more law enforcement officers in schools and began listing other resources that the state should be providing. House Speaker Cameron Sexton warned Jones not to stray off topic. Under new rules adopted by the GOP-dominant chamber last week, members can be silenced anywhere from a day to the rest of the year for not sticking to the bill being debated. Sexton then ruled Jones out of order, setting up a vote on whether to quiet him for the rest of Monday's session, which they did. What happened next was a chaotic flurry of legislative proceedings where Democrats, outraged at the decision to move ahead to try to silence Jones for the day, began pleading with their GOP colleagues to change their minds. Republican lawmakers remained unconvinced, however, with 70 GOP members voting to silence Jones. Democratic members then angrily left the chamber with Jones. The crowd, which included gun control advocates urging change in a special session after a deadly Nashville shooting in March, shouted fascist and racist, and Sexton ordered troopers to clear out the gallery of the public, including mothers of the dead children at the Christian school. Capoletti of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer will call on state lawmakers this week to pass legislation proactively protecting key provisions in the Affordable Care Act, including no-cost preventative services, as the nation's health law continues to face legal challenges in federal court. Whitmer, who is in her second term and working for the first time with the legislature Hampshire, under complete Democratic control, will call for a plan to codify the ACA during a speech on Wednesday tomorrow, where she will outline her legislative priorities for the second half of the year. It comes as one of the Affordable Care Act's most popular provisions that requires insurers to cover preventative services faces a threat in federal court. Writing the ACA into state law will ensure Michigan residents are not at risk of losing coverage due to future threats, Whitmer said in a statement provided to the AP. The plan, according to the governor's office, must include measures that prohibit insurers from denying or limiting coverage based on pre-existing conditions and would further protect a range of no-cost preventative services. Whitmer also wants legislation that requires all insurers to cover a set of essential services, such as ambulance services, birth control, maternity care, and mental health. The nation's health law, often referred to as Obamacare, has faced numerous legal challenges in its 13-year history, including several that have made it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And earlier this year, a federal judge in Texas, Amarillo, Texas, where they're judge shopping, well, he struck down an Affordable Care Act provision that requires most insurers to cover preventative services that include screenings for cancer, diabetes, and mental health. It's among the most popular features of the law, with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services estimating 150 million individuals in private health plans have benefited from the no-cost preventative services. They've been working for 13 years to destroy it. They're not stopping because they got bigger fish to fry too, and that's the whole destruction of the whole United States. It's about time we wrapped our minds around that. All right, while we wrap our minds around that, why don't we go to our break? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey, kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The American colonists came from a variety of countries. Some came seeking religious freedom, such as the Puritans in Massachusetts and the Quakers in Pennsylvania. Others immigrated to America seeking economic opportunity. Large numbers of colonists were descended from British or Irish settlers, but many others came from other parts of Europe, such as France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, and Sweden. The colonists brought their own social structures and spoke a variety of languages. There was a large German-speaking population in Pennsylvania, for example. Not everyone came to the colonies willingly. 1/5 of the population was held in slavery. More than 300,000 Africans were taken from Africa to be enslaved in Britain's American colonies and later the United States. Those who survived the Herring Middle Passage were sold as slaves. The Middle Passage was the ocean voyage between the western coast of Africa and the North American colonies. Slavery was permitted in all the colonies, north and south. Slavery continued to be legally permitted in some states until 1865 with the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Can you be banned from voting when you're 90 because of a crime you committed when you were 18? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. 15 states have a lifetime ban on voting as part of their punishment for various crimes. Note, 35 states don't. Now, consider Mississippi, where the state's constitution, adopted in 1890, specified for the lifetime voting ban crimes which, historians agree, were disproportionately prosecuted against black people. Unfortunately, lawsuits claiming that these lifetime bans violate equal protection have lost. But a challenge to Mississippi's lifetime ban recently won, based on an entirely different legal theory. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals 2-1 has ruled that the state's lifetime ban on voting violates the Eighth Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. Because, for people who have completed their sentence, this continuous punishment, this lifetime deprivation of the most basic democratic right, serves no legitimate purpose of sentencing. It's irrational, constitutes vengeance, is punishment simply for the sake of punishment, and therefore is cruel. And because only 15 of the 50 states have such bans, down from 31 in 1974, it now also is unusual. The dissent said the legislature can have a voting ban if it wants one, and the state attorney general has vowed to appeal. So, the case is likely headed to the Supreme Court. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day that became known for the Quebec Bridge disaster in Canada. Workers were building a cantilever bridge over the St. Lawrence River. This was not an easy task. The river was 2 miles wide at its narrowest point. The river was deep, moved quickly, and was icy in the winter. But in the late 1880s, businessmen in Quebec who wanted to keep up trade with Montreal decided the river had to be spanned. The project did not begin for more than a decade due to a lack of funds. Finally, the Canadian government supported the project to improve the nation's railway infrastructure. Theodore Cooper, a respected American bridge designer, was signed on for the project. Despite concerns about the bridge's design, he never visited the site due to illness. 86 men were working on the project that fateful day. Their workday was drawing to a close when the bridge suddenly collapsed. 75 men plunged to their deaths. Some of their bodies were never found. The bridge collapsed because of design flaws. The official report of the disaster noted that the loss of life, quote, might have been prevented by the exercise of better judgment on the part of those in responsible charge of the work for the Quebec Bridge and Railway Company and the Phoenix Bridge Company. Unfortunately, it was not the last tragedy trying to cross the St. Lawrence. After the bridge collapsed, the Canadian government took over the project. A partial collapse on that effort killed 13 more workers in 1916. The bridge finally opened in 1917. Its completion came at a high price, costing $22 million and 86 lives.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit, going to be much cooler than it has been, expecting highs in the low 80s. Partly cloudy skies with visibility reduced by smoke. We are under a continuing air quality alert, though at this very moment the air is quite good at the mothership, and we have the windows open to let some cool air in. But it is not going to be so wonderfully sweet air. It will be soon sour air, and we'll have to close up once again. Few passing clouds tonight with lows in the mid-50s, winds light and variable. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the low to mid-80s, winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we do have a forecast of rain beginning on Thursday and going through the weekend. We'll see how that changes, because it will. Grass pollen is rated low right here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is unhealthy at 179 parts per million. But a local weather station that has a air quality index meter is registering 32 parts per million. So that's what we're breathing right now. The daytime UV index is in the high range at level 7, so you need to continue taking care. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.17 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 75%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 68 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 71 with rain, and they do have a advisory that thunderstorms may disrupt critical electrical infrastructure. Kabul is 70 degrees and clear. Kyiv is 91 and fair. Hong Kong is 84 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 82 and clear. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 64 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and sunny. Chicago, Illinois is 75 and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Polish security authorities are investigating multiple cases of disruption to railway traffic after unauthorized radio signals stopped several trains over the weekend. On some of the signals, the Russian national anthem could reportedly be heard in the background. Poland's railway is the main transport route for international military support going to neighboring Ukraine, which is fighting Russia's aggression. The network also transports Ukraine's agricultural exports to markets further west. 2 men in their 20s were arrested on Sunday after they generated intercom signals that halted 5 passenger trains and 1 cargo train near Bialystok in the northeast. Prosecutors have opened an investigation. One of the 2 suspects arrested was a police officer, and police in Bialystok said yesterday, Monday, their agency had opened a dismissal procedure against him. Similar radio stop signals briefly stopped some passenger and cargo trains in other regions across Poland over the weekend. In some cases, the Russian anthem could be heard over the intercom. Authorities said there was no threat to public security and no one was hurt.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Yuri Kajiyama of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. All 28 vehicle assembly lines at Toyota's 14 auto plants in Japan shut down today early over a problem in its computer system that deals with incoming auto parts. The automakers did not believe the problem was caused by a cyber attack, but the cause is still under investigation, a spokeswoman said. Toyota said later that production will restart tomorrow, Wednesday. We apologize for all the troubles we have caused, it said in a statement. Toyota declined to say what models being produced might be affected. The shutdown comes after a shortage of computer chips and other auto parts stalled production in Asian nations affected by social restrictions over the coronavirus pandemic. The chips shortage woes have only recently started to ease for Japan's top automaker, which makes the Camry sedan, Prius hybrid, and the Lexus luxury brand. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.